History is often presented to us as a finished book. We are taught dates, names, and battles as if they are the solid, unshakable pillars of our past. We like to believe we know the plot. We like to believe we know the ending. But the earth beneath our feet tells a very different story. The truth is, history is not a book. It is a graveyard of forgotten things. It is a chaotic, layered puzzle where the most important pieces are often the ones that have been missing the longest. Most discoveries are loud. Gold coins, marble statues, the tombs of kings. But some discoveries are not just objects. They are silent disruptions. They sit quietly in the dirt for centuries, sometimes millennia, waiting for the exact moment when the light hits them just right. These are the anomalies, the things that shouldn't be there, the details that force a historian to stop mid-sentence, or a scientist to recalibrate their instruments because the data doesn't make sense. Size doesn't matter. A single bead can weigh more, historically speaking, than a fortress. Age doesn't matter. Location definitely doesn't matter. We are going to travel from the wind-swept highlands of Turkey to the suffocating depths of the Baltic Sea, from the jungles of Mexico to the frozen soil of Russia. We are looking for the spark. That single, undeniable detail that proves our timeline is wrong. This journey is about places shaped by belief, by desperate survival, by sudden disaster, and by the sheer, unyielding stubbornness of the human spirit. Forget what you think you know about the ancient world. Keep your eyes on the screen, because the logic you rely on is about to be tested. The ground is hiding secrets, and it's time to dig them up. Our first anomaly takes us to a place where the sun is relentless and the landscape is unforgiving. We are in the Burdur province of modern Turkey. This is a land of cragged mountains and dry valleys, a place that feels timeless and empty. For centuries, travelers, shepherds, and even modern surveyors walked through a specific valley in the Burdur National Park without noticing anything unusual. It looked like a natural ridge, just another formation of rock in a land full of rocks. But nature doesn't build in straight lines, and nature certainly doesn't mix hydraulic mortar. Right here, in the middle of nowhere, stone engineering appeared where absolutely nobody expected it. Stretching roughly 340 feet long and rising nearly 40 feet high, a massive structure was finally identified. It wasn't a wall, it wasn't a fortress, it was a dam, and it wasn't modern. This massive Roman-era dam had sat unnoticed, camouflaged by the landscape and the dust of ages for nearly 2 millennia. Let's pause and consider the implications of that size. 340 feet long, 40 feet high. You do not build something of that magnitude to water a few sheep. You don't build it for a temporary outpost. In the ancient world, labor was the most expensive resource. Moving stone, mixing mortar, engineering water pressure. This required architects, a workforce of hundreds, and a treasury to pay for it all. The sheer size immediately ruled out small-scale use. So why is it here? Archaeologists looked at the location. It was built suspiciously close to the ancient Via Sebaste. This was one of the great Roman arterial roads, a highway for legions, trade, and imperial couriers. The initial theory was simple: a watering point. Marching troops need water, horses need water. But the engineering suggests something far more complex than a roadside well. The structure suggests permanence. A dam of this scale captures a massive reservoir. It creates a lake. This kind of infrastructure is capable of sustaining an entire settlement, especially in a region where water control meant the difference between survival and death. In the arid Anatolian summers, he who controls the water controls the territory. The discovery came during surface surveys, almost by accident. When they brushed away the dirt, they found precision stonework dating back around 2,000 years. The masonry revealed advanced hydraulic planning that impressed even experts familiar with Roman engineering. The Romans were the masters of water, aqueducts, baths, sewers. But to find a structure of this caliber so far from the known major cities of the time is baffling. It raises a ghost story. A dam implies a population. A reservoir implies thirst. So, where are the people who drank from this water? There are no ruins of a great city visible on the surface nearby. There are no crumbling temples or forum columns jutting out of the scrub. Just the dam, holding back the ghost of a lake for a ghost town. Archaeologists now suspect that the answer lies beneath the soil. A nearby town, perhaps a significant way station or a lost colony, likely still lies underground, waiting for the same stroke of luck that finally exposed the dam. Until then, the dam stands as a monument to a lost community, a massive piece of infrastructure serving a memory that no one remembers. We move now from the mystery of water to the mystery of insult. Archaeology is usually about respect. We find temples, we find altars, we find careful burials. We find things that people loved or feared, but occasionally we find things that people hated. In the ancient world, how do you destroy your enemy? You can kill their soldiers, burn their fields, and knock down their walls. But if you want to truly destroy them, if you want to break their spirit and erase their culture, you attack their gods. At Tel Lachish, a major city in the Kingdom of Judah second only to Jerusalem, archaeologists were excavating a gate shrine. This was a holy place, a sacred zone where travelers would stop to pray, where offerings were made. They found the Holy of Holies. They found the stone altar. But something was wrong. In the corner of this sacred room, they found a stone block shaped like a seat, with a hole cut through the center. It was unmistakable. It was a toilet, a 3,000-year-old stone toilet. Now, finding a latrine in an ancient city is rare, but not unheard of. But the location of this one was impossible. It was placed deliberately, with calculated precision, right inside the holy shrine. The location wasn't practical. There was no drainage system, no privacy. The positioning wasn't accidental. It was a message. To understand this object, we have to step into the mind of an Iron Age king. We are looking at the handiwork of King Hezekiah. The Bible tells us that Hezekiah enacted sweeping religious reforms. He wanted to centralize worship in Jerusalem and eliminate the high places, the local shrines and idols that had sprung up across the land. He didn't just want to close them down, he wanted to make them unusable. He wanted to make them impure. The latrine appears to have served a symbolic purpose: desecration. In the ancient mindset, ritual purity was everything. By installing a place of human waste inside a place of divine worship, you weren't just vandalism the building, you were spiritually nuking it. You were ensuring that no one would ever pray there again. The physical evidence supports this narrative of violent reform. When archaeologists looked at the altar in the shrine, the holiest object in the room, they saw that the horns of the altar had been intentionally smashed off. The altar was killed. And then, the toilet was installed over the ruins. It is a brutal piece of political theater frozen in stone. Waste, in this case, became political language. It was a way of saying, your gods are dead and your rituals are filth. But the story of Tel Lachish has a darker ending. This act of internal religious purging was preserved because the city itself was destroyed shortly after. Tel Lachish fell during the terrifying Assyrian campaigns in 701 BCE. The Assyrian war machine crushed the city, burying the gate complex under rubble. That destruction acted as a time capsule. It froze this moment of religious defiance in time. The toilet was likely never used. Laboratory tests showed no evidence of waste, which suggests it was purely symbolic, a statue of disrespect. Rarely does archaeology uncover intention so clearly expressed through placement alone. Stone doesn't shout, it doesn't write manifestos. Yet here, a simple stone seat speaks loudly enough to still unsettle modern sensibilities. It reminds us that the past was not just about survival. It was about ideology, anger, and the violent struggle for the soul of a kingdom. Discoveries often require patience, but sometimes nature decides it has held a secret long enough. In the valleys of the Argentine Andes, the weather can be violent. Rainstorms here don't just wet the ground, they scour it. They strip away layers of topsoil that have remained undisturbed for centuries. During one such storm, the rain peeled history out of the ground. As the mud washed away, a flash of color appeared in the gray dirt. Green. And beneath the green, the dull glow of metal. A face emerged from the mud. It was simple, haunting, and unmistakably ancient. Archaeologists recovered a copper mask dated to roughly 3,000 years ago. This discovery sent shockwaves through the world of South American anthropology. Until this moment, the accepted academic timeline was clear. Metallurgy, the complex science of smelting and working metal, was thought to have originated exclusively in Peru, among cultures like the Mochica, before spreading slowly south. Argentina was supposed to be a backwater of stone and bone. This mask destroyed that theory. Measuring only 7 inches long, the copper sheet features crudely but carefully cut openings for eyes, a nose, and a mouth. There are small perforations along the edges, suggesting it was tied around a head, or perhaps placed over the face of the dead. This is the earliest known metal object ever discovered in South America. The implications are massive. It means that 3,000 years ago, people in this region had mastered the fire and chemistry needed to transform rock into metal. They weren't just surviving, they were innovating. But the mask was not alone. Nearby burials revealed a startling, almost macabre detail that brings the human element into sharp focus. Archaeologists found a skeleton. And on that skeleton, the skull carried a distinct bright green stain. This is what happens when bone stays in contact with copper for thousands of years. The metal oxidizes, and the corrosion bleeds into the organic material. This proves the mask was worn in death. We have to imagine the scene. 3,000 years ago, a community gathered in these mountains to say goodbye to someone important. They didn't just wrap them in cloth, they forged a new face for them, a face of imperishable metal. The craftsmanship is what we might call crude today. The metal is uneven, the cuts are simple. But that lack of refinement doesn't diminish its importance, it amplifies it. This represents the beginning. We are looking at the very first steps of a technology that would eventually build empires. This object wasn't a decoration. It carried symbolic weight strong enough to follow someone underground. It was an attempt to make a human face eternal. Sometimes innovation arrives quietly. It doesn't happen in a giant factory. It happens in a small fire in a mountain village. And sometimes it stays hidden, wrapped in rain and soil, waiting centuries for erosion to tell the truth. There are cities that are mysteries, and then there is Teotihuacan. Even the Aztecs, who found the city abandoned centuries after its collapse, were terrified by its scale. They called it the City of the Gods, believing that giants must have built it. At its height, it was one of the largest cities on Earth, a metropolis of over 100,000 people, organized in a perfect grid, dominated by the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. But Teotihuacan has a problem. It has no voice. Unlike the Maya, who covered every available surface with complex hieroglyphs detailing their wars, their kings, and their stars, Teotihuacan seemed silent. We don't even know what the people called themselves. Teotihuacan is the Aztec name. The original name is lost. For over a century, archaeologists believed the Teotihuacanos were illiterate, a civilization that built a superpower without a writing system. But in 2020, the walls began to speak. Scattered across the plastered walls of the city, particularly in the La Ventilla district, are red symbols. For decades, researchers walked past them. They catalogued them as iconography, mere decoration, pretty pictures of flowers, animals, and abstract shapes. But a new analysis has shifted the perspective entirely. When you look at art, you see composition. When you look at writing, you see syntax. Researchers began to notice patterns. The glyphs weren't random, they had structure, they had repetition. They were placed in linear sequences. This wasn't just art, it was a system. The red glyphs of Teotihuacan are now believed to be a rudimentary, or perhaps a highly abstract form of writing. The evidence is mounting. Murals in the city depict figures, priests or scribes, holding open objects that look suspiciously like codices or books. If they had books, they had literacy. Why does this matter? Because Teotihuacan predates both Aztec and Maya dominance, yet it influenced both. If these red marks are words, they change everything. The city ended violently. In the 6th century, the temples were burned, the idols were smashed, and the population fled. It was a societal collapse of apocalyptic proportions. If the glyphs form a readable system, They may contain the answers to the greatest questions of Mesoamerican archaeology. Who ruled this city? What language did they speak? And why did they burn it down? Imagine walking through a library where the books are painted on the walls, but you have forgotten how to read. That is the tragedy of Teotihuacan. Walls could function as pages. Paint could function as memory. Without translation, the silence persists. But somewhere within those red marks may lie an entire narrative, a history of kings and catastrophes, waiting for a key that no one has found yet. We are now traveling back much further than Rome, much further than the Iron Age. We are going back 66 million years. The Badlands of South Dakota are a paleontologist's dream. The erosion here is constant, stripping away the modern world to reveal the Cretaceous period underneath. It is a stark, beautiful, and lonely place. In this terrain, a horn poking through the soil didn't look impressive at first glance. Park rangers had actually spotted it a year earlier. They noted it, perhaps thought it was a fragment, and moved on. To the untrained eye, fossilized bone just looks like a weird rock. But when a team led by paleontologist David Schmidt returned to the site, they realized that the small fragment was actually the tip of an iceberg. That horn was attached to something massive. As the team began to brush away the dirt, the shape widened. It kept going and going. Excavation revealed a 7-foot-long Triceratops skull. The scale of this animal is hard to comprehend until you are standing next to it. This single skull weighed nearly 3,000 pounds. That is the weight of a mid-sized sedan, comprised entirely of bone. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a logistical nightmare. The skull was located on a steep slope. You can't just drive a truck up there. The removal required 2 months of agonizingly careful work. They had to use hand tools, dental picks, brushes, small trowels, to separate the fossil from the rock matrix that had held it for 66 million years. One slip of a chisel could destroy information about the animal's life, its growth, or its death. Once freed, the fossil was stabilized with plaster, a technique that hasn't changed much since the 1800s. It's a low-tech solution for a high-value object. Then came the heavy lifting. Why is this specific skull so important? Triceratops fossils are relatively common, but complete skulls are rare. The frill, that massive shield of bone at the back of the head, is usually thin and fragile. It often shatters or is eaten by scavengers before it can fossilize. This specimen was astonishingly intact. Even the delicate horn cores were there. The team suspects that the skull is just the beginning. The positioning suggests that the rest of the skeleton, the spine, the ribs, the massive limbs, might still be underground, dipping further into the hill. Every time we find a Triceratops, we learn a little more about the ecosystem of the late Cretaceous. We learn about what they ate, how they fought, and how they lived in the shadow of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. This solitary giant, dead for millions of years, has been given a second life in a laboratory at Westminster College, waiting to tell us how the world looked before the asteroid fell. We have uncovered the giants of the Badlands, the secrets of the desert, and the hidden writing of lost empires. But the ground is not the only place hiding the truth. In the next episode, we are leaving the solid Earth behind. We will plunge into the freezing darkness of the Baltic Sea to find a warship destroyed by a weapon you want to believe. And we will examine a fossil that proves even the ocean's deadliest apex predator can make a fatal mistake. You do not want to miss what scientists found inside the stomach of a sea monster. The evidence is underwater, and it is waiting for you. Click the video on your screen right now to continue the investigation.